Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Dave and we're here talking about stocks. Today's stock is Rocketlab. We're going to go over a bull case in Rocketlab and why you might be interested in investing in it. If you're new here, please do consider hitting like and subscribe down below. It'll really help me to continue to grow the channel. Originally, I was going to give both a bull case and a bear case in the same video, go over pros and cons, take a balanced view of the company before giving my final thoughts. But eventually it just became too much. There's too much to look into. There's so much interesting stuff going on with this company. So I'm actually breaking up the video, and this one is only the bull case. So this is bull case of why you might want to invest in the company. Now, don't take this and say that, okay, Dave's buying it, it's a good buy, because I will be coming out with the bear case and then sort of look at both sides to the argument before making my final decision on this company and where I stand on it. But to start off with, I'll just give you a brief overview of the company. They have gone public via SPAC in the past year, really done extremely poorly in terms of a stock. That's mostly to do with macro market trends. They're losing money at this point, which is not unexpected of a new rocket company. Very expensive industry to get into, to get going. And the macro markets are punishing any companies that are not profitable as of yet. So the kind of elevator pitch for how they're approaching things differently is that their Electron Rocket is extremely small, lightweight, can manufacture very quickly using 3D printing and other methods like that. You might think that's a little odd, like you've got SpaceX building the biggest rocket in history right now. Why do you want a small rocket? Why do you want a really small rocket that can take small payloads? Well, think about it in terms of technology. You know, you have more processing power in your pocket right now in your phone than an entire giant mainframe the size of a car 30 years ago. So why should the same not be true for satellites? Right. So satellites have been getting smaller and smaller, lighter and lighter. We're able to cram more and more technology into a smaller, lighter space. And maybe you don't need a massive rocket to get your small satellite, now even like the size of a shoebox, into orbit. So do you really want a rocket the size of a giant skyscraper if you have a shoebox satellite that is suitable for your needs? So this is a market that Rocketlab specializes in covering, the small sat market. It does make a lot of sense to me. If you really think about it, technology continues to get smaller and lighter. So why not have a little rocket that can service these companies? Now, there is still a place in the market for these giant mega rockets, but I mean, just imagine trying to have like thousands and thousands of these tiny small sats in a giant rocket, and they all want to go to different orbits. And you got to try and organize these launches. So if you're a small company, you've got a small sat, you want to launch, you may not want to have to try and figure out some kind of a ride share on one of these big rockets. Maybe you want your own rocket. Like, you can pick your own orbit, you can worry about your own launch date and not have to wait for a company to organize a ride share. That's kind of the thought behind it. All right, guys, this is the stock chart of Rocketlab since they went public via SPAC in, looks like, September-ish of last year, 2021. And as we can see, they had a brief pop, which I find is quite common with these new listings, and since then it's been all downhill. Personally, I believe that is almost entirely due to the macro markets as opposed to something that they've done wrong on their end. It's just that we're in a period right now where investors are rotating into value and safer stocks and away from these speculative companies that are not yet making money. But you look at the stock chart, why would you want to invest in this company? Well, I'll tell you, it basically comes down to one man, and that's this man right here. His name is Peter Beck. Very smart guy. I've listened to a lot of his interviews. He's not just a businessman. He's the CEO of Rocketlab. He's also chief engineer. So he doesn't just pay attention to the business end of things. He actually designs rockets, and I really love it when my CEOs are also super smart technically and really embedded in the business and know not just about the finance side of it, but also the product design. And he is an extremely smart man. If you look at his interviews, something I like to follow is that people who have nothing to do with investing, they're rocket enthusiasts. They love rocketry and make YouTube channels on rockets. Guys like Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, or Scott Manley, or there's 100 of them out there. A lot of fun, great content to watch, really. But they love Rocketlab and they love this guy. So that's what I like to see. Is I know the people who are smarter than me about this industry, who are more knowledgeable about it, the really big people in terms of, anyway, the YouTube community, and they all absolutely love Rocketlab, which is a huge point in their favor, in my opinion. So you think about the space industry right now, who's the biggest? It's SpaceX, right? And how did they go from a tiny startup to the biggest player, the only American company currently being able to send astronauts to the International Space Station? Their Falcon 9 rocket is an absolute workhorse. They're launching a new satellite constellation. They're working on a new mega rocket that's fully reusable. How did they do all these things? Well, number one, they have Elon Musk, who is the CEO, but he's also chief engineer and designs rockets, not unlike Peter Beck. And there's a lot of similarities, and I love having the CEOs really involved to that level of depth in the company. So after that, SpaceX developed the first, I would say, reusable first stage of a rocket on their Falcon 9. They re-land their first stage, which is about 90% of the entire rocket, and reuse it, and that brings costs way down. That's how they've been able to outcompete the rest of the industry. They were originally laughed at for this crazy idea, but it has been successful, and now they're going even further, trying to go fully reusable. But this video is about Rocketlab, so reusability is really the key, and now they're trying to make their Electron rocket reusable as well, which would vastly reduce their launch costs and increase margins. Think about it. Instead of having to rebuild a rocket from scratch every single time, they'll be able to reuse it just like SpaceX. It's really a necessity in the new space industry. So I'd like to show you guys a quick video. Okay, here we go. I think you're going to find this quite cool. So that's their Electron rocket. This is a test recovery. This rocket did not actually go into orbit. This is a test of how they're planning to recover it. It is coming down by a parachute. And we have a helicopter coming in to make a catch in midair. And they can only do this because their rocket is so small and light. More heavy-duty rockets like the Falcon 9 are not able to be caught by a helicopter. They're simply too heavy. And there we have a successful catch. Pretty cool. Helicopter is taking it back towards land. These shots are so cool. And there we have it, touching down on land. So moving on, clearly reusability is going to be a big part of how they want to compete in the future, but let's just go over some information from their most recent quarterly results. So their order backlog in the past quarter grew 194% from 82 million to 241 million. That's a massive growth. Doesn't really need to be explained. They had some pandemic challenges. They acquired 2 leading space system companies and closed another acquisition. So they are spending a lot of money despite not being profitable, but they're doing it to expand. They want to play in all areas of space. So not just the launches, but they also want to manufacture your satellite for you and basically do everything. They have a really cool launch complex in New Zealand. It looks state-of-the-art, like something out of the movies. It's really amazing stuff. Signed multiple contracts with the U.S. government agencies. So they are being recognized by the government and getting work from them, which is always big in the space industry. They signed multi-year launch agreements with 3 commercial satellite constellation operators. Awarded some money from the Space Force to develop their new Neutron rocket, which is always helpful. 24 million is pretty small potatoes in this industry. It's almost nothing, but it does help. They've completed 2 ocean recoveries of their Electron, so if they can successfully make that the norm, that'll be huge for them going forward. Electron is their current operational little rocket, whereas Neutron will be the larger one they're currently working on. It's a medium lift 8-ton rocket. And let's continue on. So highlights from Q4. Launched a few missions for Black Sky, signed 3 launch contracts with Synerspective, Third Ocean Recovery. They closed several acquisitions, announced another acquisition. These are companies that do things like create solar panels for space, hardware, satellites, things of that nature. So not just the rocketry side of it. And they were awarded a contract from NASA to launch a solar sail mission. So, good stuff. Were awarded new contracts and made some acquisitions, although you may want to be a little worried about the spending, but we get into more of that on the in the bear case of the argument. So once again, order backlog grew from 183 million in Q3 of 2021 to 241 million in Q4 of 2021. And then now in Q1 of 2022, we're at 545 million. So they're getting a lot of customers, which you love to see. Their order backlog grew by almost 100% in a single quarter in Q1 2022. It's very impressive. So it seems like the demand isn't the problem so much as their ability to launch all these rockets. And with the reusability hopefully coming online soon, we really hope they'll be able to ramp up their launches and launch more frequently, make more money. They were awarded a contract by MDA to design and manufacture 17 spacecraft for Globestar. So there's a lot of money in, a lot of people think about the rocket launches because it's like the most glamorous and big eye-popping part of this whole industry. But there's a lot of money, quite frankly, probably even more money to be made in the manufacturing of these satellites than the launches themselves. So it is good to see that they're into designing the satellites as well. And kind of what they've said is they want to be involved in every process of the space industry, not just launches, but also manufacturing, testing, et cetera, et cetera. So their strategy to grow Rocketlab space business and move up the value chain, providing end-to-end space mission solutions. So completely end-to-end, not just the launch, as we discussed. So now we get into a bit of the real numbers here. Okay, so looking at the numbers, Q3 of 2021, they made 5.3 million. So that's pretty small potatoes, really. They did go all the way up in the next quarter to 27.5 million, which is in a single quarter, it's over 5 times growth, which is quite good. But I mean, that's not something you'll expect every quarter. They had encountered some challenges with their Electron rocket. And then if you look at full year in 2020, they did 35 million. 2021, they did 62 million. So again, almost a double, 77% year-on-year revenue growth. But we just don't have very much to go off of at this point. So if you're a believer in this company, you want to see that growth continue to increase, and hope for 75% plus revenue growth year over year continuing going forward. Not a profitable company as of yet. Still burning cash, trying to grow their business. And we can see in terms of spending, R&D versus SG&A. Ideally, you'd like to see the RD&A high compared to the SG&A, which is just like administrative expenses. Whereas R&D, of course, research and development has to do with more building their new products, their new rockets. So that will go up and continue to go up. As we see, 2021 was higher than 2020. They're working on a new rocket called the Neutron. They're working on making their current rocket fleet reusable. So we do expect the expenses to continue, and we have to see the growth continue apace and even beyond that. So that's the last slide of the presentation. I just picked some of the more important ones. As I said, we don't have a ton of financial data to go over in terms of their history. Very new company. And really, if you're buying in at this point, it comes down to this, man, in my opinion. You're betting on the jockey on this one. Very smart guy, very intelligent. They're going to be the second private company to have a reusable rocket, at least not 100% reusable, but 90%, as the second stage will not be reusable, but their first stage will of their Electron rocket, as we saw the rocket catch. So they could potentially become, in terms of a bull thesis, number 2 in the commercial space industry behind SpaceX. That's the goal, right? Now, SpaceX is the current leader of the industry. Their value as of the last time they raised money was $100 billion. That's SPX for SpaceX. And Rocketlab is currently valued, which is kind of ironic, by the way. Rocketlab's publicly traded and SpaceX isn't. Rocketlab is valued at a currently $3.6 billion. So pretty small potatoes. That's about 30 times smaller. Let's say the ideal case in terms of our bull case is that Rocketlab becomes the number 2 in the industry. Now, what do you expect? Well, a number 2 in the industry shouldn't be 30 times smaller than number 1. Could it be 50% smaller? Yes. Really depends on what they do. Amazon's trying to launch a new constellation. They're not going to go with SpaceX. They're just not, because Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk don't really get along. And of course, Jeff Bezos is trying to launch his own company. So there's a lot of other satellite constellations potentially coming online. A lot of other customers potentially available. So if you're betting on Peter Beck as a very smart man who's going to be the number 2 company to have reusability, potentially become the number 2 company in the space industry, you got to think maybe there's even a potential for a 10x down the line. Maybe that's not completely unreasonable. So if Rocketlab became a $36 billion company, now they'd still only be about 1/3 the size of the number 1 player, which is SpaceX, obviously. So that's kind of a reasonable size, if you ask me, at least for the number 2 in the industry. Still a long way to go, clearly. A lot of hurdles, but not out of the realm of possibility just in terms of that. This is just for a bull case, by the way, guys. I will be going over the bear case and some of the downsides and some of the possibilities that this couldn't happen. But if you're looking for a company that has the potential to 10x over the next 10 years, I'd say the potential could be there if they execute properly. They have a brilliant CEO. He's an engineer, not just a businessman, deeply involved in building their rocket, understands the product at an extremely deep level, and their goal is to be the number 2 in the space industry. No one's here saying they're going to take over SpaceX. I don't see that happening at all. But if they become a number 2, maybe they could 10x. We have to see some more numbers, guys. We don't have enough historical data yet on terms of the growth rate, how fast they're growing. We can see the order backlog is growing, which is great, but how fast are they going to be able to address these orders? That's all for now. We'll go over a bear case as well as final thoughts in future videos, but potentially that is the bull case of this company. If you liked the video, please do consider liking and subscribing, and come back for my future videos. Thanks. Bye.